Coming up, the Oko app moves to subscription, and I think I'm going to delete Facebook.
You're listening to Double Tap, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another Double Tap, and it is I, Stephen Scott. Shaun Preece is by my side. I thought I'd do the hello, hello, hello. I'm going to be honest with you, Shaun. I'm a little bit perturbed today.
Oh, well, great word, by the way, perturbed.
Word of the day.
Why are you perturbed?
Because I'm starting to hear some other people in the broadcast industry, podcast industry, saying hello, hello, hello. I'm deeply offended.
No, are we going to try and trademark the word hello here?
Well, saying it 3 times in quick succession, yes.
In a Scottish accent, yes.
Hello, hello, hello.
We all know the truth, like many other things in the tech industry, broadcast industry, and in the world, Stephen Scott. That was your idea. You started it. We all know that.
Yeah, well, look, as we all know, there are only 7 great ideas in the world, and they've all been done. I've got to say, I think I have decided that on the show, one day we should definitely delete Facebook from our phones. We should just do this.
It's so funny. Don't we keep saying this when we're having our own private conversations.
That sounds really seedy the way you just said that. Don't say it like that. During our private conversations.
Well, we talk on air so much. It's like we do also talk off air. In fact, do we talk to our families? But no, you're absolutely right. I waste so much time. Just, what do they call it now? The youth? I think they call it doomscrolling.
Doomscrolling, that's the phrase I've heard, yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's a great way to describe it, because you are just going round and round and round. And you're sitting there watching these, and it's the videos, right? It's the videos that come on Facebook.
It is.
You watch one, and then it just carries on to the next one, carries on to the next one. And
it's endless.
You just get, and honestly, it got to the point yesterday. This is, I think, where I've hit my new low. What I was telling my wife about bottled water and the regulations and laws around bottled water in the UK.
Please, let me just stop you there, because you said that, she was so bored, I've reached a new low, and then went on to tell me exactly all the details about that.
I told you the story about it, which you actually said was quite interesting.
But no, yeah, it's just, I mean, it is addictive, right? When I come down in the morning, when I get out of bed and I put the kettle on and make some breakfast, I put Facebook on and I switch to the videos tab and I just let it play.
And it's the same on X, it's the same on Mastodon. I go on and I doom scroll because I think, well, maybe something I've missed. There's that sort of fear of missing out of something, especially because I used to use X way back at the beginning when it was called Twitter. I used to use it for all the news gathering, right? Because the news channels or the news organization would always put their news up there first.
Yes.
So you would be able to sort of track. And that led to, I think, a bit of an addiction for me to start going in every day and just making sure I hadn't missed anything.
But that changed for me. I was exactly the same. My timeline was really tailored to certain people, certain companies, and that changed for me. It seemed like I lost control of the timeline. Now I'm sure there's tools in there I didn't dive into to make it as my own, but that did change for me. I've actually deleted X now. It's gone.
Yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because the timeline is just so full of stuff you never wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's not even content I'm interested in reading, political stuff or, whatever it might be. I'm not interested in that. I don't want to hear about it. I just want to live inside a tech bubble. That's all I want to do. Is just live inside a tech bubble.
Do you want your own safe space, Stephen Scott?
I think it's called RSS feeds. I think that's what it is.
You know what? Yeah, after all my railing about RSS feeds and what are they, no one understands them, I actually use Leary more than anything else.
That's a wonderful app, isn't it?
For, actually looking at stories. I've got a list of feeds in there, Apple Viz and everything else. And, I just quickly read through that. It does work really well on the iPhone, at least. That's where I'm using it.
Yeah, and there was a website, and I'll maybe post a link to this in the show notes because it's an interesting little tool. If you've got a lot of RSS feeds that you use, you can create what's called an OPML file, which is basically like a file that contains all those links and all those feed links. So if you've got a link, say, to CNN, for example, their news feed, which you've got the RSS feed link to, you can take that link, you can paste it into this OPML generator, and you can just keep doing this. You can just keep copying and pasting all these in, and then create that OPML file. Now, what you can do with that is if you've got an app like Lyre, it's Lire if you're searching for it on the Apple App Store, and there's a Mac app as well for it. You can then import that OPML file, and that will contain all those links that you want. So if you want to take all those links and just put them into that so that you know you've got all the sources you want, then you can immediately start importing onto that app. But like me, if you're on Windows as well, you might want to do the same thing, but you don't get Lyre for Windows. So you have to use something else. Now, there's one called RSS Newsreader, or it might be Accessible RSS Newsreader, but it's a really simple app. But again, you can import that OPML file you've got, which contains all those source links, and then it will just generate them all for you there. Look, the benefit of having Lyre on the Mac and on the iPhone is that if you read an article on your iPhone, it won't show you again on the Mac because you've already read it, so it's synchronized.
Yeah.
But if you're across different platforms, different apps, you're obviously not going to have that. That's a small price to pay, though.
Well, yeah, but it's still fine because it's so easy to navigate, at least on the Lyre app that I'm talking about. It's so easy to navigate and jump through the stories. That's the whole point. There's no ads in there. I mean, ads have got absolutely terrible on websites now, to the point where even in Reader View, I found that my voiceover is just getting interrupted by, playing video or close, just constantly repeating. There's dynamic content, inserts of adverts that are just getting in the way. It's websites are just such hard work.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some cool things in like Safari now in the reader mode on the Mac. You can have summarize. I haven't tried it on the iPhone. I'm sure it's there. But now you've got summarize, where you can just take a big story or a big news article and you can just summarize it down to a few lines. And that's pretty cool.
Do you trust that, though? I mean, there's been a few news stories about the new Apple Intelligence summarizing of notifications and messages and YouTube videos, and sort of making a few blunders there with its summaries, making a few faux pas.
I think that the most notable one was the BBC, wasn't it? The BBC had reported that a number of its notifications, its breaking news announcements, which, by the way, could be absolutely anything.
Yes.
A man drops a tortoise and suddenly that's breaking news. Breaking tortoises, I guess. But I
love that show.
That's my favourite show of all. Didn't have audio description for years, though, remember. But the thing is, they were sending out these news alerts, and then Apple Intelligence was summarizing them and just completely hacking it. It was just no idea. It wasn't relevant to the story. It was even making up elements of what the story was. So it was making the news story untrue. Now, look, in a world where we're trying to build trust or keep trust in mainstream media, well, some of us are, then, it's difficult when, people are getting that false information, which is not being provided by the source. It's being regenerated by the phone.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it is what it is. It's an artificial summary of a news story. And I think, it's going to make mistakes. I'm not going to take it too seriously. But would you use a summary, an AI summary, for an article you're trying to get information from? I just wouldn't. I think that RSS feeds in some way are the way to get away from the noise of social media. If you want to get, and you still, I think with Mastodon especially, they talk about this. You can take say you follow an individual. I think about immediately David Goldfield, who posts on the Tech VI list, and if you've subscribed to that, and I know many of you have, that's a great list. Now, of course, you can follow the group itself. You could follow David on Mastodon, and you could actually follow him as an RSS feed. So you can do that as well. So you can take that channel, if you like, and just follow it in your RSS reader, meaning you don't have to go to the social media platform to actually get access to his content or his feed. And I think that's really cool as well, because again, it's giving you access without all that noise. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a bit sick of it. And it's let's be honest, I'm going to just say it, from January 20th, it's probably just going to get worse. So, for me, I think it's probably the case I want to get as far away from that world. I totally agree with you. Everything you just said, absolutely. Easy access, straight to the information, no noise, no distractions. Except the hardest thing I find is finding the RSS feed link. I still struggle with that. I can't quite get my head around it. I mean, a lot of the time, because of WordPress, the amount of WordPress sites out there, you simply ask, put the URL and put /feed at the end, or RSS, or whatever it may be. But that's the only thing I struggle with, which is why that OPML file is so useful because I just stole yours.
Well, that's right. And that's the thing, right? So someone could, and I've seen other people online actually sharing theirs. They'll say, hey, here's my list of accessible sources. And I'll sometimes go in and say, oh, I'll take that one, take that one, take that one. And that's quite good. The other thing to say, and it's good to know this, that, you're able to use things like Chrome extensions. There are certain Chrome extensions you can get which will seek out the RSS feed inside a website for you. So that's kind of cool. An app like Lyre, though, has the search function in it that it will search. You can search for a publication or a news outlet or whatever you're looking for, and it will, if it's in their library, I guess, or maybe it goes off and searches online, I don't know, it essentially will pull up that RSS feed for you. And I've found things for like NPR and The Guardian and the BBC. And
I did not know that.
Services.
I don't think I've ever used that feature.
Yeah, you can just search for it in there. So you can actually search for a feed and then just add the feed straight into Lyre, which is really cool.
Which basically, I mean, let's get back on track. So we're going to delete Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just sick of it, and I just think it's just getting to the point where, I mean, the thing I wanted to do was kind of shift my social media consumption, if you like, to the computer. That was my intention. So my thinking was, I'll just do everything online, and that means I'm sitting down. I've kind of got a purposeful, because it's different. I don't think you doom scroll on a computer the same way.
Absolutely not. You're so anyway. Right. Yeah.
Because you've got other things to do, right? You get an email and you get distracted off. You actually get distracted off it rather than on a phone where, yes, I know you get notifications, but you can ignore them. And you're just happy to sit there and just listen to the YouTube video or whatever else. Exactly.
Well, I've turned into my kids because, I mean, the kids never, instead of turning the telly on now, sit on the settee and just grab my phone and put on the videos.
That's right.
I mean, the TV doesn't even come into it anymore. So... yeah, but what we're coming down to is that it just feels like we're wasting time. We could use that time. We had this talk, and then I went off and downloaded Python. I said, right, that's it. 'Cause I used to love coding. I'm going to get back into coding. I'm going to download Python. Let's get into that. And within half an hour, I was back on Facebook. I installed it, though. So, tiny steps.
Well, bit of background for me, right? So I have been really having a lot of difficulties with this hand, the essential tremor, and I'm going back to the doctor to get more treatment for it, hopefully, because it is getting really irritating. It's getting to that point where, if someone says to me, oh, so it must be terrible being blind, I'm like, yeah, but my hand is really sore. I don't care about that anymore.
You use the word irritating, but it is becoming an issue, right?
Oh, it is. I mean, literally trying to type an email is just an effort, and that's not good. That's really not a good place to be. Nope. And it's kind of letting me try out different things. It's also teaching me how bad dictation is. So it's all these kind of things. You start to worry a little bit, right? Because you think, goodness me, the basics I'm struggling with here. Yep. So, for that reason, sitting with a phone and just letting the phone just lie by the side and consume content is quite relaxing. And, if your arm's sore or whatever, your hand's sore, in my case, it's like that's all you want to do is just sit down and just relax. And therefore, the idea of sitting down with a computer to do all this is a bit of a nightmare. But there's another side to this. And this is the bit that's, I think, more important. We kind of touched on this the other day, maybe yesterday, I think it was. Facebook accessibility and how bad it's become. And this is a real issue because if I did want to just sit down at the computer and do all my stuff on Facebook on the computer, I'm really going to struggle now. Because I cannot find a simple, accessible way to do that through the Facebook website. So the phone is accessible. The phone app is accessible. Now, of course, I know I could use it with a Bluetooth keyboard, but to me, that's just psychologically just keeping it on the phone, which means it's already there, and it's just I want it off the phone. And I know I can hear you all saying, look, you've enough gadgets lying around, you could probably put it on another phone. I get that, and yes, that's probably the way I'll end up doing it. But I just want to use it on the website as an accessible website. Mastodon is fine because I've got Mona, Mona, that is, on the on the Mac, which is great. A Tweezcake on the PC. I think there's a bit of a rewrite coming for Tweezcake by all accounts. I don't know if that's
I think it's about time, to be honest. That's been the same. I mean, arguably, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But
I think it's just there's a lot of functionality to Mastodon that's not available in the Tweezcake app.
Yes, yeah, I agree. It just feels like it could do with an update.
I'd love to see Mona on the PC, to be honest. I think it's such a wonderful app.
Well, what was that website you told me about for Mastodon? That was fantastic.
It's Enafore, Enafore, Enophore was the one that I visited, and that's actually a very good website.
Is that .com or
.com, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll search for it. Enophore, Enafore.
Yeah,
Enophore.
That's a really good one to use.
Very accessible.
And bizarrely, X is accessible. I just still find that hilarious.
Well, after you mentioned that about Facebook, I actually went in Facebook on my computer for the first time in years, and eventually remembered my password and signed in. And first thing I did was hit the question mark or the slash key on my keyboard, thinking it would bring up the accessible keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
And it actually brought up a dialog box saying, you've pressed slash, do you want to turn on first letter navigation or something? I thought, oh, maybe this is to do with accessibility, and maybe, this is what Stephen was missing. So I clicked OK, and no, it didn't make any difference at all. Shift slash or the question mark on the keyboard did bring up a list of all the keys for jumping through and creating a post and things like that. It just didn't work. I had exactly the same experience. No matter what I did, put in the screen reader, different screen readers in virtual PC mode or pass-through mode, could not get that to work at all. So I absolutely right.
So frustrating, especially when the functionality clearly, it's either there or it's been disabled.
Well, that's the only thing as well. I was thinking, well, maybe, if I go into settings and, there are accessibility options in there. I can't remember what they are now, but I'm pretty sure there's accessibility features in the settings for Facebook. I was going to look through there, but I never got back to it.
I did notice that toggle because, and the reason that I got to the toggle was because when I was arrowing through all the different shortcuts, it was saying hidden a lot of the time. And I thought, why is it saying hidden? And then I thought, oh, they've disabled all these. This is all disabled. I thought, that's not very good. So eventually tabbing through, it got to this toggle switch, which said, do you want to turn on these shortcuts? And I thought, okay. And that's when I thought, I found it. I've got the Willy Wonka golden bar. I'm off. I'm running.
Golden ticket. Yes.
The golden ticket. I've got a golden ticket and I can navigate Facebook.
And it didn't work. Yeah, I've got to say that they have done work from just a general screen reader user point of view. Jumping through headings took me to various different areas. It was still very good. It's just
so much of it. That's the problem.
Such a clutter. It's so difficult just to jump to the container, the group, the region that you want. So,
and LinkedIn, oh my goodness, do you know what? See, of course, let me just say, LinkedIn, the world's biggest bragging network. One thing it can't brag about is accessibility on its site. It is all these people who proclaim about accessibility in their little field and whatever area it is they work in.
Oh, little field, patronising much. Okay,
and but everyone sits and goes on about how wonderful accessibility is all over the place. On the very platform they're talking about is not accessible. I mean, it's accessible on a phone. Again, the phone seems to kind of work. Although I will say, if you try and send a message to someone, it's horrendous. A private message, if you're sending a DM or a connection message or a request and you're trying to contact someone, that's a horrible experience because the send button seems to be completely outside of the realm of focus for the screen. You have to explore by touch to find it.
I don't use LinkedIn. I'm not professional like you, so I've never used it.
I just don't get it.
Isn't that a Microsoft platform?
Do you ever think sometimes it's like, I saw a comment yesterday, just a random comment about web accessibility and thoughts of the thoughts of the general public on disability, and someone said, just in a throwaway remark, I imagine, but it really stuck out, they'll probably cure blindness before people would ever accept disabled people. Do you know what I mean by that?
No.
Like, before we're fully accepted, before we're seen as equal, before we get understanding from the public, before any of that, someone will have cured blindness and it won't exist anymore. And I think that's true. I actually think that's true. Maybe my mood is lower today. I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit. But I just think, we go back to the sighted zombies. You turn around and there's another one, and it's now the same with websites and apps. You turn around and go, here we go again. Sometimes you just can't be bothered with it. You go into an app and you go, right. I mean, it's like yesterday. I was trying out an app on the PC, and it's a fairly, from what I understand, it's a fairly simple layout. I mean, it's a fairly complicated program, but the layout is quite simple. Completely inaccessible. Button, nothing labeled. So come on, you know.
Do you know what? It's funny that you tend to have like a space. It's like buses. You know, you get one inaccessible app and then 3 come along at once. I went on ChatGPT yesterday. I haven't used it in a while on the computer. I've got the website saved as a shortcut on my desktop, and I used to use it all the time. Went on it, couldn't do anything with it. It just seemed to, where's the accessibility gone? The ChatGPT Windows Store app, the official app for Windows, good luck with that one as well.
It's the same on the Mac, yeah. It's just not, it's horrendous. You can now navigate around it. However, it won't read any of the responses. And you can't navigate to them. You can't navigate to the responses at all. The only option is the website, really. And I've not had major issues with that. I mean, they improved accessibility on that with the H for heading, navigation, and B for
what,
all that stuff.
ChatGPT are we talking about?
On ChatGPT.com, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the one I saved. And as I said, I thought the accessibility was absolutely fantastic on there at one point. But I tried it yesterday.
It's changed, has it?
It was totally dead. Oh, excuse
me. That's what I'm calling you now.
Yeah, sorry, ChatGPT.
See, it's just artificial intelligence is pretty good. Hey, listen, while he's dealing with that, I just want to mention as well, because I do want to move on to one of our main stories today, which is something that you spotted, actually. I spotted it as well because I got an email in from the good people at Oko. You might remember this app we've told you about. It's available in several countries, including Canada. And it's an app which helps you cross the road, essentially. It uses artificial intelligence to determine the state of the walk, don't walk sign, or the cross, don't cross sign on the box or whatever on the other side of the road. Yeah. And it's been, widely praised for what it can do. Now, it's not available where we live here in the UK yet, but they have just announced that they are going to switch to a subscription model. I'm going to play in, this is the official email that was sent out to anyone who has been involved in or has been subscribing to or just downloaded the Oko app if you give them your email address. This is the official email that's been sent out by the Oko founder, Michael Janssen.
Oko has shifted to a subscription model for all users. We understand this is a big change, so I'd like to give some extra context. We currently offer a monthly as well as a yearly subscription, where the yearly plan is 50% cheaper than the monthly plan. Both plans include a 14-day free trial, so you can test Oko to ensure it meets your needs. We made this decision to help us continue maintaining the application and supporting our team, efforts that require substantial resources. By transitioning to a subscription-based model, we can keep delivering the best experience possible for everyone who relies on Oko. Thank you for your support and understanding.
So that is the official line from Oko and its founder, Michael Janssen, who we have spoken to on the show previously. What's your first thoughts on that one, Shaun?
I think it's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, do you know what? I hate to agree with you. I really do. But I agree. I actually think that this is a bit of a cautionary tale for developers.
Yes.
And perhaps, I understand there are people who will be upset by this. And, I want to play in a clip from the interview that we did with Michael Janssen back in June last year, on the 27th of June last year. And this is him explaining his thoughts on cost. You asked the question, is there a cost to the app when we first spoke to Michael about the Oko app? This was his response, and in particular, listen out for the bit where he talks about the future plans in terms of costs.
Oh yeah, so it's a free app for the end user. Although we are working with like businesses or governments to basically partner with them, whether it's from a data perspective or businesses or governments trying to increase their accessibility. And that's also been part of the vision and mission early days. Crossing the street, no one should pay for it. And the same can be said for anything that we are going to develop. There's always the connection with more the B2B or B2G that we're always trying to facilitate.
Now that was back on the 27th of June 2024 that Michael said that to us. That is a line I've heard a lot from developers over the years. That's not unique to Oko. That's not unique to any app I've heard about recently. Everybody seems to think that the answer to funding comes from business or from government.
Yep.
And I guess there's just a limit to that. There's a limit to how much government and business will put into these kind of things. So, I think there comes a point where we have to ask ourselves as a community, okay, are we willing to pay? Are we willing to pay for this? I've heard from developers, and we are going to be airing an interview soon. We did an interview last week that will be airing soon, which gets into this actually in quite a bit of detail, and it's not related to this story at all. But I did ask the question about, what's your view on charging customers? And the developer told me they were quite surprised to learn that people really loved the app and were willing to pay for it. And that surprised him because he was thinking, well, of course, we wouldn't charge the community. And this is...
You think starting out at that point is a mistake, right? Having the foundation that this should be free to the end user is a mistake.
I get it. Because the challenge, I think, for developers is they look at the community and they hear the stories of 75% of working age people who are blind, for example, are out of work.
Yeah, which if the stats may be a little bit wonky, I totally agree with. The majority of us are out of work.
But does that mean there's no money swishing around? I think that's the second part of this story, right? Because everyone always says that, and that suggests that every single blind person lives in abject poverty. And of course, there are many blind people who live in abject poverty, as indeed people who are not blind live in abject poverty. There are absolutely those people. But there are also people who aren't exactly making millions or sitting there rich and, counting their gold coins. But there are people who've got a few quid in the bank who might decide, as over the course of a month, to be discerning about how they use that money. And I think it's about giving people a choice to say, look, if you can afford this and you want it, then you can have it.
There's an option there.
And look, if it doesn't, if no one in the community buys it, it might not be because the community can't afford to pay for it. It's maybe they just don't want it. That's market forces.
Well, yeah, it's a complex situation, right? There could be, yes, I've got the means to pay for it, but it's not infinite. There's only so many services that I can pay for. I think it's a sort of, you could say the same thing for streaming services, right? Everyone wanted the cable cut so much, and then, well, now I'm paying, it may only be $10 a month, but to, 15 different streaming services to get everything I want. So I don't think there's an easy answer to this, except I think it's how much a service costs. I don't mind paying for a service, but I need to see the value in it. And that's the tricky bit. I mean, $20 a month, $30 a month, you start to feel the impact of that. Under that, maybe it's a bit of a throwaway amount that you don't mind paying. But also, how much do you use that service, that app? If you use it every single day, then surely it's worth paying for. I've heard people say that this is similar to the Voice Dream Reader situation. And I don't think it is whatsoever, not at all.
And just to give some context to that, that was where essentially the app was promised to be free forever.
Well, no, there was a one-time lifetime fee.
Oh, sorry, yes, you're right, yes, yeah. So there was a one-time fee, and then that was it, wasn't it?
And that's the difference here. Oko has been, you didn't have to pay for it before, and now they've realised to keep it going. Maybe they haven't got the business interests, that subsidise this for us. They need to do this subscription. And that's, for me, that's absolutely fine. I mean, as you brought up, we don't want to point at that clip and say, ha, you said you wouldn't charge us for it.
And I know people who might. I know people who might say, hey, we got him. He said this. He said it on there. But that's not, I don't think that's fair. And this is why I brought it up, because I feel it is a cautionary tale. And I think that, this, I almost feel like at that moment, I can't remember how I felt at that moment, but I probably thought in my head, yeah, let's see how long that lasts. Because the chances are you will have to go to the community and ask for money. And I say the community, I mean subscribers, anyone who wants this app, right?
Yeah. The difficulty I have is that I can't use it. So I can't say this is definitely worth the money. But from the people I've spoken to who do use it, who do like it, it's up to them to decide. But I don't think there's any... there's anything we can throw against the developer for saying, you know what, we need to charge for this.
I don't think you can criticize someone who wants to keep something going and therefore has to, find funding to do it. It cannot continually be free. This is the problem. Now, I get that the argument that was being made at the time, and certainly the hope, I think, from Michael and from the people who, any of these developers, frankly, who say this, and there's a lot of them who say we'll get businesses, we'll get government. I mean, I remember when Soundscape was reimagined, it was the same thing. Everyone was saying the same thing. Well, business will pay for it and government will pay for it. I'm thinking, this is all very well and good, but at some point, why don't you just go to the community? And I said this even to the Soundscape developers. I said, why don't you just go to the community and say, do you want to do this? Now, I mean, Voice Vista is a good example of where, essentially what's been put out there is that if you want to pay, you can.
Yeah, an optional,
but you don't have
a donation.
Yeah. And there are people who, if they genuinely believe in something, will put their hand in their pocket and put money in.
Yeah. I use Voice Vista every day. I have no problem at all in paying for that.
That's right.
But then again, I'd be interested in the numbers. How many people actually do pay for it? Did it make a difference? If this wasn't a passion project, would it actually, if there was some sort of a business behind it, would it actually have ceased to be? That's the problem. Would you rather pay for it or not be there?
Well, look, we could argue this all day, but I think I'd like to hear from you guys to see what you think about it. And if you think that OCO or any app developer should not be charging, and in fact should be trying to get business or government or whoever to pay for it, why is that? I'd love to hear that argument from you, why you wouldn't pay for it, why you feel we shouldn't pay for it. Because I imagine there's people out there who do feel that way. But I'd love to hear why, because I don't get it. I think, look, I know there are lots of products and services and everything out there's got a subscription cost, but no one's holding a gun to your head and saying you have to do it. You have to buy it. You have to pay. You also don't have to pay. You could find another way. It's like people who were going on about Voice Stream Reader as if it was, the only app in town that could do the functions that it provided. There were others. Speech Central, I think, was one of them.
That's the
and
one
everyone
that
said,
kept
it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, but you have an option is my point.
The reason I think that's different is because, someone bought this under the promise that this was going to be a one-off payment.
It was the promise that got them in trouble, I think. That was the issue.
The only correlation between this and OCO is that, as you mentioned, developers need to be cautious.
But
you
that
can't
is the
promise
cautionary,
things and take it back.
Exactly. That is the cautionary tale in this.
Yeah.
I think developers have to stop this idea of free at the start. I just think, you know what? I think you've got to decide your product has value, get some belief behind it. If it floats, it floats. I mean, okay, you have a month free trial or whatever. Let people get a taste, and if they're interested, they'll continue using it. I think that's the way to do it. I think give people a month's trial and say, yeah, and you know what, after this you pay. Because then you're setting the expectation.
Yeah, and also you work towards of getting it the end user cost subsidized by businesses. If you can forge those relationships with businesses and get a revenue stream from business or government, then that can affect the subscription cost or totally negate it in the first place.
Yeah, you want the other way. That's right. You want to actually remove the subscription cost.
Yeah, but you start off with it to keep the project up and running. I mean, arguably that's what IRA are doing, right? And we all know the prices of IRA cause a lot of issues for a lot of people.
We criticise them for having too high a price, don't we? And it's like, okay, well, how do we win? I mean, look,
how do we win? Yeah.
It is difficult, right? Because actually IRA's a great example of that because they've gone the other way. They've done it the other way, which is to put almost the cost onto the consumer.
Yes.
Which I actually think is a good idea in some respects. I think that I wish the costs were lower, but I do appreciate that I've talked to people who use IRA and they say one thing I love about it is that I pay for this and that I have some control over, when I talk to the agent, I'm paying for this service. It's giving a bit of agency. I think that's the problem. I don't know about you, but I often feel sometimes in Blind World we're kind of given, well, certainly in the UK, I remember this was more of a thing in the UK. I don't think the US and Canada have had this issue, but there's been a lot of giving going on in the UK. Well, we'll give you this and you can have that and, you'll use this. And suddenly someone says, hey, could you pay for it? And you're like, what? I'm not paying for a Daisy player. What are you talking about? Or whatever it might be. I was given one. I remember that argument at the time when RNIB pulled all the Daisy players and said, no, if you want one, you'll need to buy one. Yeah. And everyone was up in arms. Like, how dare you? I'm not paying for something I got for free. And my issue was at the time, well, look, again, this is all about setting the expectation. If you had asked someone, look, you're going to have to pay for this in whatever form that is, then at least you've set an expectation of it. But if you take the cost away or you never introduce a cost and say it's free, then when it comes time to charge, people are going to think twice about it.
People are shocked by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But arguably, there is also the other side of the argument about, well, what should be provided by a government agency? It's costs that should be covered. I still find it absolutely amazing. Here in the UK, the air ambulance service is a charity. You could argue, IRA, Be My Eyes, something like that, they could replace, personal assistants. It's so difficult now, the costs involved in having a personal assistant, a support worker, the amount that you have to pay towards that. I just think there is some responsibility with government to cover or at least subsidize some of these costs as well.
You can say what you like about the States, but I am quite amazed at the amount of funding that goes into products for blind people by the government. The NLS Reader, the NLS, the new book player that's coming, the new Daisy player, the APH relationship, which means that blind people get access to Braille. I mean, and now of course a huge investment of $10 million to get the Monarch into people's hands, the tactile,
which is amazing.
Machine. That's amazing.
And it's not just the US as well. There's other countries where the government has bought a national JAWS license. Everyone
I want to say Bulgaria, but I don't think it is Bulgaria. But there was a country like that. I'm sure started with B.
Yes.
But you're right. They basically just bought a JAWS license for the whole country. Anyone who needs it gets it. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? I mean, it's like, for me, that is like JAWS is an interesting one because you could always argue there's a free option. So, countries can get away with that and say, well, governments can say, well, just use the free option. But I think there comes a point where there are certain products, certain services that are essential for a blind person to succeed in whatever walk of life they want to do. I'm not saying that necessarily you need to give it to every person who doesn't work. I mean, you absolutely could if you had a national license. But my point is that if you're going into a job, it should just be a given that you have those tools.
Well, arguably, though, I mean, in most countries now, the internet is seen as an essential, not a luxury anymore, especially if you, I mean, I do all my grocery shopping online, all of my shopping online anyway. Arguably, it is an essential. Is it down to a government to pay for that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I suppose the question comes if the government ever turned around to say, well, look, if you can't afford to get online or you cannot get online, we will provide you with a device. Then I would argue that they have to provide you with the accessibility tools to go with it.
And then again, arguably, there may be some sort of social welfare or benefit that we're getting that is meant to pay for that anyway.
Interesting one.
It is. But basically, what I come down to, I think OCO have done nothing wrong here.
I don't think they've done anything wrong at all. I mention it because they've done it, and I think if I'm honest, it's the smartest move they've made. Because look, it keeps the thing going. Right, and that's
which
the
is
bottom line.
Yeah,
and actually furthers development because I would love to see it in the UK. And if it came here and it was usable, and I haven't tried it either, so I can't speak to it. But if it was something that was good and I felt value in it, I would pay for it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But equally, I know people who can't. That's and I think let's take. I'm sorry to say it, but let's take the can't out of it a little bit because that's always going to be the case, right? If someone can't afford to pay for it, they can't afford to pay for it. There's not a lot I can do about that. But if you won't pay for it, that's who I want to hear from. I want to hear from you if you wouldn't pay for it. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? What's your thinking there? Okay, look, if you want to get involved with the show, you know how you can do it. It's all the usual ways. Shall we remind people how to do it?
Yes, why not?
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback at doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Yeah, in no way was I searching around for the button to press to play that in. That was not what was going on there. Right, let's move on to a couple of emails. Jay's been in touch. Now, yesterday we talked a lot about Meta Ray-Bans, but in particular, Jay wants to touch on Be My Eyes on Ray-Bans.
Hello, Double Tappers. This is Janita Rukmal from Sri Lanka. I have some good news for your listeners tuning in from countries other than US and using VPN to update and get the AI functionality of their Ray-Ban Meta glasses. If any one of them would like to have Be My Eyes connected with their glasses. I think they have the opportunity now because I got mine connected just this evening, a few hours ago, and it's working perfectly. So all they have to do is go to the App Store or Play Store and check for an update to the MetaView app. Usually, even in App Store, when they just go and check the app, it does not come up with an update. It just gives you the open button. Instead, you have to just flick left a little and go to the item that is announced as MetaView, and then it refreshes itself so that an update button pops up. So once the update is done while you are on VPN, soon as you fire up the Be My Eyes, it comes up with a prompt that says you can connect your Meta glasses to Be My Eyes. And instead of going through all that hassle to find the accessibility button in MetaView app, this was what worked for me, and I hope it will work for your others as well.
Thank you for that, Jay. That was really, really wonderful to know.
It's still so confusing, isn't it? It's such a weird situation with the Meta Ray-Bans and just using VPNs.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but at least it's working.
Thank you for your email, or your voice message, I should say. Let's hear from Hetty.
Hello, my name is Hetty Siegel. I'm a blind person living in Dayton, Ohio in the States. I just wanted to tell you about something that I thought was just awful. It was in the 70s. There was a show, a popular show called Family. I used to listen to it all the time. And there was one time when her father, the father of the family, became blind. And at first he was very upset, depressed, the whole business. And then, he got himself adapted, and he was still working at his job as a lawyer, and everything was great. And I thought, good, end of story. That's great. But then there was an operation that came up. They said it would either kill him or cure him. The wife did not want him to do the operation because she was afraid she'd lose him, which is very understandable. I wouldn't want my husband having some operation that might kill him. He's blind too. And so I accept that. That's fine. That's what we are. That's who we are. And that is fine. It's not a crime to be blind. It's a fact of life. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought about this. The little girl, so like a preteen, she wouldn't come down to supper because her dad wasn't going to do the operation. She said, I don't want a blind dad. Who is she to say such a thing? Who is she to make her father go through an operation that might kill him just because she doesn't want a blind dad? To me, that is just very inconsiderate, rude, and not good. Anyway, I hope you will use this message, at least edit it out, say something that, to this problem. Because, when people start thinking it's a crime to be blind or you must get your sight back, I mean, I might like the Neuralink if my eyes would accept it, but I'm not even sure if they will. But it's not going to kill me. If it were going to kill me, I might have a few second and third thoughts about, should I really do this operation or just go on with my life the way it is? Thank you so much for your show. I love it. It's awesome. And keep up the great work. Thank you again.
Thanks, Hetty. Appreciate the comment. I must admit, I wasn't entirely sure where that was going, but that's quite interesting, I suppose.
Well, initially, of course, we're thinking, well, this is fiction. This is a TV world where they wouldn't react like that. A little girl wouldn't come down and say that anyway. But I'm kind of also thinking, well, actually, it does move on to the Neuralink, about restoring sight. I wouldn't get too annoyed by this. I mean, portrayal of blind people, even disabilities in TV shows. We can have a whole week on that, I'm sure.
But they don't. I wouldn't say that those views are uncommon in the real world. That's the problem, I guess, is that this is how the sighted people. There are a lot of sighted people who would tell you to your face, the last thing I'd want to be is like you.
As we've talked about before. But if you switch that around and ask the dad, you could get your sight back, but there's a chance it could kill you. I mean, how many people say, I'll take that chance?
Yeah, not me. I don't. I think that's the line. I think for me is really.
It's an individual thing, and as you mentioned, then so many people say, "I'm so glad I'm not you," or "I'd rather have this than what you've got." I mean, it's a fear, isn't it? Of blindness does cause fear. So, I'm not sure. It's a bit of a deep question.
I just think, when it comes to blindness, I mean, if you're talking about blind people and our views, there is no one view on this. This is why I hate the one true opinion. There's this sense out there that we all have to be jumping up and down and over the moon about being blind. You know what? It is okay to say it's crap to be blind. It's okay to say that. Because that might be your opinion, that may be your view, that may be your experience. That is absolutely valid. And, it shouldn't be the case that it's like, oh, well, you can't say that. Because there are people that say that. The people who say that, there's sighted people say that. But you can't say that. Why not?
Well, no,
what are you talking about?
The danger is that because, you say, oh, yes, it's crap, as you say, to be blind.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It is. But but the problem is that therefore it means that you are unhappy or you are unfulfilled or you are whatever else. And that isn't the case. You can still recognize that I'd rather not have this disability.
Yeah, but also that's okay.
But still be quite happy in where you are now as well.
Yeah, but it's also okay to have a bad day,
Yes, of course.
Everyone always tries to fix everything, don't they? It's always like, oh, well, I'll make you happy or I'll tell you a funny joke. Just leave me alone. I'm having a bad day. I have plenty of happy days and plenty of down days, right? This might be one of them. But, could be a great name for a segment. But honestly, I just think that, it's okay to be that way. And, I think the only thing I often find is a little bit irritating, and I understand why it happens, but there are a lot of disabled people who kind of go out their way to tell you that if someone came up to me in the street and offers me help while I'm outside, I'll be very annoyed and I'll tell them off and I'll tell them what I think of them. And I'm like, no, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. I agree. Because you're preempting a lot of it. There's a lot of preempting goes on these days. Like, I know there's guide dog owners who go to restaurants almost armed to the teeth with law information about what will happen to this restaurant if you don't let me in.
Yeah, but arguably they need to because the majority of times they get refused.
You can just go to another restaurant, right? Why put yourself through this nonsense? Why you're doing this to yourself?
To make a change because they should know that
I'm not interested. I want to eat. If I'm with 4 people and we're going to have a dinner and they don't want me in, do you know what? Screw the restaurant. If you don't want my business, screw you. I'm not interested. Okay. And that's the message we should be sending to people. If you want us as part of your website or part of your store or part of whatever, you got to let us in. Otherwise, we're not paying you money. We're not going to give you cash. I'm not going to pay. Can you imagine?
They don't see us as customers anyway.
I'm walking into, well, exactly. Why am I going to give them money? So I go into a restaurant, right? And they were not, your guide dog can't come in here. Well, actually, no, not having it in here. And you go through the whole back and forward. Eventually, they say, all right, fine, we'll let you in. I'm not eating there.
Okay, but what if the other restaurant you're going to go to is the same? They won't let you in either. I mean,
I don't know where you live, find that. There's usually more than 2 restaurants. So I think we'll be all right.
But they're not. Okay, all right. We'll see.
I don't know. I think sometimes we can almost preempt. We create.
Well, we do go
the
through
situations
everything
in our minds because we build this situation up as to what we're likely to expect.
That's what we do anyway.
And a lot of us do face that, right? A lot of us do face those issues, and I get that. Yeah. But sometimes I think, you've got to think about your own reaction because look, we can all get riled up about various things. You could also not. It's like the offence thing, you know. It's like people who say, "I'm offended by that." No, you've taken offence. I want you to say, if you're so obsessed with language nowadays, people, if you're also obsessed with language and the right words, well, okay, let's use the right words. You've taken offence. No one gave you it. No one said, "I'm offending you now. Be prepared." They said, "You have taken offence."
Yeah, but
there's
again,
a difference.
There's, it's not black and white. There is obvious offence that you're going to call someone if you say a certain thing. You can't say,
absolutely,
I'm shocked
but that's
that you've taken offence by that, subtle, no offence meant statement that I made.
But you know what it's like nowadays. You know, you say the wrong word to someone and they're off crying like babies, and it's like, stop this nonsense. Just stop it. It's just rubbish.
I just don't believe that everyone is like that. And also, you take your restaurant and it's fine. I'll go to another one. What if the taxi turns up and won't let you in? You just say, all right, I'll just order another one. Next one turns up, won't take you. Next one turns up.
I think there's time and place for everything. I think it's also about the way you respond. I think a lot of it's how you respond to things. Sometimes you can walk into a situation, you can walk into a restaurant, taxi. I have had situations where, one particular occasion where I realized very quickly the person I was talking to didn't understand what I was saying, didn't understand that I was saying guide dog. They actually thought, as I realized later, they thought I was talking about gold dog. Now, you might think, well, that's ridiculous, but the person wasn't understanding what I was saying. And it was a golden lab, right? So they were thinking I was saying gold dog for whatever reason, and that was why he didn't understand. Not everybody knows everything about everything.
No. And I'm sure that the reaction, you respond how you get treated, right? So I'm sure if he just didn't understand that, he wasn't shouting and bawling at you, right?
No, I don't go into it shouting and bawling. I mean, I'm sorry,
if a taxi driver says you're not getting in, I am shouting at that guy if he's being that way with me.
Well, I don't jump straight to that. No, I mean, look, it is a slow build.
You explain that you should.
Yeah.
It's the law.
I don't think you need to start throwing the law on. You don't have to do all that. Just have a conversation. We're human beings, for God's sake. Can't we just talk to each other?
If a human being is not
going to enact the 1848 law, it's like, oh, shut up. I wouldn't want you in my car either.
Okay. Thank you, Hetty, for that. Oh, wow. I'm sure we're going to get emails about that.
Okay, let's go to Ian.
Hi, guys. Stephen's recent shouty rant about the lack of technology support by disability charities rang two bells in my head. A while ago, I heard about such a team employed by the RNIB in the UK and excitedly emailed them with a couple of ideas around accessible technology. I never got an acknowledgement and subsequently learned that the resource had been scrapped. No reasons were forthcoming, but I do suspect a lack of promotion of the service to generate demand and a corporate feeling that it was too hard to deliver. The second bell was when Apple revolutionized accessibility on the iPhone over a decade ago. I was an enthusiastic early adopter, so much so I wrote to my nearest Apple store, 60 miles away, to impress on them the new market they had opened out if only they could persuade the visually impaired to take the leap. Given the profits they make on iPhones, they could easily afford to train up a voiceover specialist in every shop who could set up the phone and give an hour's initial training followed up with a telephone helpline. I even offered to arrange scheduled visits to the shops by local societies and volunteered to promote and answer questions free of charge. Unfortunately, as you know, such a proposal never saw the light of day, and for decades the benefits of the iPhone had to slowly grow through word of mouth and online email help lists. Imagine how much more money Apple could have made in those early years with an organised campaign, and how much more quickly the blind could have obtained such a wonderful resource. Whatever anyone thinks about Apple, they had the greatest impact on my independence and enjoyment of a blind life, second only to family and friend support. I wish I could say the same for certain related charities and societies. All the best, Ian from Hull.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're right. I think organisations have a duty to provide technology support. I mean, I don't think it's even an option anymore. I think it should just be part of the deal that it's, this should be almost the leader.
A duty? I think it's an interesting use of word.
Well, look, you said earlier, right? Access to the internet is almost, a necessity these days. It's almost becoming the fourth emergency service. If we don't have access to it, we've got a problem. Broadband is becoming an essential service. It's one of the things become protected now in some countries. You can't not have internet. But if you don't have the access to the tools or the learning, what use is any of it, right?
I'm taking from that more that it's almost developing, taking the time and the money to develop this accessibility when we're talking about Apple, and then almost not pushing it. Not
Do you know what it is?
Out to people, which is very
Look,
true.
we've only got a minute left, so I'm going to say this briefly. But the nerds created voiceover, right? And wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous nerds created it. The problem is when the nerds are pushing it, they just assume everyone's like them, and that we'll all just pick it up and we'll learn it and it'll all be fine. Of course, that's not quite the reality, and ultimately that's the problem. I think they do need to promote more. I remember going into an Apple store and having a conversation with a manager who I said to him, what you need are voiceover training classes, of course, but I also want to learn how to use Final Cut Pro or use iMovie or iPhotos.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, but we do voiceover training. And I said, great. Do you do it on we do Final Cut training. I said, excellent. Do you do it with voiceover? No. And there was a kind of an aha moment where, oh, I see what you mean. You want to learn how to use the apps. I'm like, yeah, that'd be kind of handy.
Yes.
Because it's kind of pointless just going, I've got an iPhone and I can send a text. And that's it.
That's because
Anyway,
they think that basic voiceover is enough, right? But there's more to it. Yeah.
Listen, we're out of time, but we'll be back tomorrow with more. And
more shouting.
Some more. Yeah, I like a bit of shouting. Don't you enjoy it? Doesn't make you feel better.
It does. The blood is pumping. Thank you, Stephen Scott.
Catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.